Nebenstimmen. A podcast by Ensemble Modern. Nebenstimmen brings you conversations on music, art and life between ensemble members and conversation partners chosen by them. Find out what the musicians are working on at the moment and what their personal thoughts are.
Hello, I'm Paul Cannon, double bassist of Ensemble Modern, and today I have the pleasure of sitting with the composer Hannah Kendall. Hannah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So in 2020, actually in the middle of the pandemic, Ensemble Modern was introduced to you for the first time by a mutual friend, George Lewis.
Yes, yeah.
And we didn't meet you personally, probably because of the pandemic, but we got to meet your music. And that was a piece called Verdala. And that was part of a larger project George had curated for us, which he was calling Afromodernism. And 2 years later, we finally got to meet in person for a premiere at Donaueschinger. And that was a piece called Shouting Forever into the Receiver. I should mention that both of those pieces were conducted by another mutual friend, Vimbai Casaboni.
Yeah.
Both of whom, George and Vimbai, have already been on this podcast. I want to ask, because we played Verdala, and 2 years later we played Shouting Forever into the Receiver. And from my sense, those were very different pieces, stylistically.
Yeah.
And I would love to know what brought you from one stage to the other in that stylistic shift. And maybe you can explain a little what I mean by that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think it's definitely the case that they sound like completely different pieces. Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's probably because Verdala was written when I was still living in UK, in London, and then Shouting Forever into the Receiver was written after I'd been living in New York for several years. And I think that I only really had the opportunity to really discover how I wanted to write music really and truly when I left the UK. I don't think I realised this at the time, but I think I felt quite hemmed in that musical climate. And I don't know, I suppose I'm a little bit weird. And I wanted to be weird in my music, but I didn't really feel as though I could do that at home. So there was definitely something about moving away from home and being in a space such as New York City more broadly, but also at Columbia, where I went to do my doctorate. So with George Lewis, who was my doctoral supervisor, and the rest of the faculty at Columbia, where you're just sort of left to your own devices for the most part, obviously supported by people, but you can do whatever you want. And when I was allowed to do whatever I want, pieces such as Shouting Forever into the Receiver were born. So, yeah, in all honesty, I think that's what happened.
When was Verdala written?
So that was 2018, and it was premiered at the Proms in 2018. So just before, I think literally 1 or 2 weeks before I moved to New York. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I like both pieces very much. I'm just surprised from time to time when there's such a big stylistic jump over a very short period of time, what might have triggered that. So you think that had more to do with your surroundings and where you were at that time, like physically, geographically where you were?
Yeah, but I think it's more the environment and space that I had in New York that I hadn't really ever had before. I certainly didn't have that in London, where I was So I was working in arts management, like sort of juggling so many things. I think I'm juggling a lot of things now as well, and I think most musicians are. but I didn't really have the time and space to stretch my practice in a way that I would have liked in London. So I think that's a part of it. But also I think it is to do with the pandemic as well, because I think at the time none of us knew if we'd be able to do what we do ever again. And so a lot of the things I'd been thinking about, such as, I don't know, you know, having like a bunch of music boxes or, you know, preparing strings with dreadlock cuffs, things like that. I sort of thought, oh, well, you know, why not just give it a go? Because one thing that came out of the pandemic is that there were you know, people commissioning smaller works, sort of, you know, solo works for online streaming. And I think I utilised that opportunity to try, you know, preparations and things I'd been thinking about in a smaller, seemingly less risk-averse space that I then built into ensemble pieces. So I think it's a combination of those things.
That sort of leads me to one of the questions I wanted to ask you today, that you use certain objects and certain preparations which seem to be more than just simply about the sound for the sound's sake. Some of these objects evidently have some symbolic or a deeper meaning for you. And I was wondering if you'd like to talk a bit about that. So the piece we're working on now with you is, again, Shouting Forever into the Receiver, but also Even Sweetness Can Scratch the Throat, which use a lot of the same techniques, music boxes, harmonicas, and so forth. Maybe you can tell us a little about that.
Yeah, I mean, the objects themselves are important. So I hope they don't come across as gimmicky or whatever, because the symbolism behind them is really important. So, for example, the dreadlock cuffs, which are, well, hair accessories, and specifically Afro hair accessories. And I use those objects in particular because what I'm trying to emulate is the coming together of the Afro and the Euro, as was the situation on the plantation. So it's a blending of these Afro objects with European objects. So, you know, violin or a harp, or actually double bass. I've recently started using the cuffs on double bass. They sound so good.
Okay.
So that will probably be coming soon. And so I've been working my way through all the instruments. And so it kind of, with regards to sound, it throws things off a little. But that's the point, because the sound that they produce is completely unpredictable. I can't predict what the pitch content will be, for example. Right.
I mean, the effect of the cuffs is more or less a multiphonic, isn't it? Yeah,
I mean, it depends where you bow. So ideally, multiphonics are produced, but it sort of depends on if you bow in front of the cuff, behind it, or on it itself.
Oh, okay.
It isn't an exact science, so I haven't really figured it out. I'm still working on that. So the result is unpredictable, as was the situation of the plantations. But that's the sort of the meaning behind why I use certain objects and the purpose of it as well. And that's certainly the case with the dreadlock cuffs. With the music boxes, there are sort of a whole host of reasons behind using them. I think the sound of them specifically can sound quite innocuous and childlike and, you know, cute and, I don't know, somehow frivolous in some cases, depending on how you use them. And it's kind of a trick. I'm trying to be a little bit sneaky, I suppose, in that respect, because it catches people off guard. Right. If you hear, you know, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star playing, for example. But then if you use them sort of a collection of music boxes as something quite sinister. So you can kind of shift and change the dramatic effect.
It's definitely creepy. And you're also even using the winding mechanism in advance of that's amplified.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of winding up the mechanism of the plantation machine. So that's why I use them, because they're symbolically winding up all the different machines that make up the plantation machine. And this is sort of after Benitez Rojo's thinking of the plantation machine, which is this huge, big machine. But he says that there are a bunch of different machines that are operating at the same time to make up the big one, such as, a naval machine, a religious machine. Did I say naval already? I'm really jet lagged, can't remember already. A political machine, military machine, etc., that all kind of run along in smaller ways, but collectively make up the plantation machine.
Is this coming from that idea from Gilles Deleuze?
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So machine theory from. Yeah. Could
you explain that just... I don't know if it's possible to explain Deleuze in one sentence, but...
Absolutely not. That is an impossible task. But, he was sort of saying that machines... They're kind of in a flow and interruptive state at the same time. So the more they flow, the more they interrupt.
So this is a way of understanding sort of human interactions on a very different scale than what we're used to thinking about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how people interact in an impersonal way, or how societies is interacting within itself, and there's all these different machines, which are somehow also interlocked and influencing each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So so as I understand, both of these pieces we're talking about are very much about that idea of the plantation machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you? Since maybe I'm a little naive about some of these things, could you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
As in the pieces themselves, how they are. Yeah. So I suppose with Even Sweetness Can Scratch the Throat, it is... I mean, I picked the title from Ocean Vuong. They're both from Ocean Vuong, because that title in particular... captures the sweetness of sugar and the violence at the same time. Right. So I really liked that. And I suppose that lends itself well to the Deleuze machine theory as well, because it's, the more something repeats, the more it interrupts, which sounds counterintuitive, but if you think of all of these machines going, I suppose a metaphorical machine as well as a literal one, the more they repeat, the more they're kind of, interrupting each other. And so there's something in that title which I found quite captivating, because, of course, sugar and the substance itself is completely addictive, and the commerce was addictive as well. This wonderful money generator. But of course, that wasn't the case for the folks on the plantation who were procuring the sugar, right? And so it's... So that's what I'm trying to do in the piece with regards to the plantation machine, and I suppose specifically in that case, looking at one of the substances that was fueling this whole thing.
Right. I mean, and sugar in particular was especially insidious.
Exactly.
As I'm certainly not an expert about these things, but certainly the sugar plantations were much more violent and much more dangerous for the slaves and for the people working the fields.
Exactly, yeah, particularly brutal because of the central system of the windmill, of the mills that ground down the sugarcane. And the people operating the mill and the machinery and the precarious nature of the machinery. So many enslaved people would, lose limbs as a part of that, and the boiling houses as well to boil everything down into sugar. It was incredibly violent and dangerous, and that doesn't even touch the the oppressive side of being enslaved and, being on a plantation, regardless of, the actual act of making the substance of sugar itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So the music boxes themselves are little machines.
Right, yeah.
And there was something you mentioned the first time when we worked on the premiere, was that all of these music boxes are playing, they're not just recognizable songs, they're songs from a particular time. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So all the tunes are from the time of when the plantations were being established specifically. And I think that's because being English and being British in the UK, that sounds really weird. But I'm sure people know that one can be both things in the UK. So I'm specifically English and British, and there is this lack of understanding of the UK's involvement in the transatlantic slave trade in the UK, which sounds really bizarre.
Okay.
But so we don't have any national monuments. If you asked folks on the street about the UK's involvement in the transatlantic slave trade, I would bet that there wouldn't be an in-depth knowledge. And actually, I was just asking. Okay. Yeah, I was just asking some students about this who have just come up through the British education system, and they say it's the same thing. We're not taught about this in school, which sounds really bizarre now living in America, where there is a strong cognitive understanding in the general population of the slave trade in America, but that's not the case in the UK because it was happening on the other side of the world, and so you can kind of forget about it. It sounds really, really strange, but I would assert that that's the case, and so I think by using these tunes, it's sort of triggering a memory that hasn't even really been formed, really. So I'm not sure if this is the thinking behind it. This is the aim, is that to think about, in Europe, when Beethoven was writing his Fifth Symphony, 1808, what was happening at the same time on the other side of the world.
That's a connection I don't think I'd thought of before you brought that up.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, Ode to Joy is coming out at the same time that we just have millions and millions of people suffering horribly.
Exactly, or just later with Ode to Joy. Yeah, but at the same time.
You have Schiller writing this lovely text about all men are brothers. And,
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the reason behind it. Yeah. And because in Europe and UK, we think of these instances as being completely separate, and it's just not the case. And so that's why I use those tunes in particular. Yeah.
It's effective with that kind of background knowledge. I think it's interesting because, of course, when we worked on the premiere, we'll have a first reading of the piece. And we won't talk about what it's about. We just need to put the thing together and figure out how to play the thing. So on first hearing, one has a particular personal interpretation of what they're hearing, and they might see it as abstract. And you mentioned before that there's always this danger when you have objects like a music box in a piece. There's that danger of it seeming frivolous or silly. And certainly, anytime we have a piece like that where there's objects and toys, we're having fun and we're playing with our toys. And then you come in and say, this is about the the slave trade and misery and And sure, one hears the piece completely differently. Not that I thought it was a funny piece in the first place.
I understand.
But I wouldn't have necessarily gotten all of that without some explanation. Which kind of leads to a bigger discussion about programmatic music versus abstract music. And I think some people have very strong feelings about that. Like, I've heard that argument that music is fundamentally an abstract form, and if it can't be understood in an abstract sense, then it's not working. I don't think I agree with that.
I don't think so.
But I'm curious what your thoughts are about that. And first of all, would you agree that your music is more on the programmatic side?
No, I don't think so. I'd love to talk about that some more, because I think some people have... I try not to read reviews, but then people send you things. And so I did recently read something about that. And I think I disagreed... Or maybe I should say that certainly isn't the intent. Maybe it comes across that way, but it's...
Well, let's talk about what is programmatic music. So it's certainly not a Straussian tone poem. It's not telling a definite story. But it's also not a purely abstract. It's not a fugue.
That is true. I suppose maybe I struggle with that thought, because I suppose I instinctively think there is a strong narrative arc. Maybe I'm incorrect in thinking that, and then I suppose that isn't what I'm trying to do. So maybe it's that instinctive connection that I make between programmatic music and having some sort of narrative, and I'm not trying to do that.
Well, I suppose there's a spectrum.
I suppose.
I mean, if I would think about visual art, there's paintings which are purely abstract, and there are paintings which are obviously that's a flower. And then there's plenty of things which are somehow in between, where there might be definite objects or people in the painting, but the scene itself is abstract. And that doesn't mean it's trying to tell you a very specific message. But it's definitely giving you a vibe.
That's true. That's true. I do like that assertion, actually. And I suppose going back to your question, I've been thinking a lot about Glissant as well, who is another thinker and writer I go to a lot, because he speaks about opacity and the sort of, I suppose that sort of the ethics of understanding, and how much, especially within a Caribbean sphere, how much we can demand opacity, really, or should we be demanding it? Transparency.
But transparency in what sense?
In understanding. The thing is, I just had coffee with Fred Moten. I don't know if you know the poet Fred Moten, who's one of the most incredible writers and thinkers, I think. And we just met for a coffee, and it was sort of a 4-hour coffee.
Oh, one of those.
And it was one of those, and he he actually said this incredible thing where, well, Glissant, I can't get out of bed without thinking of Glissant, for example. So he's a big thinker and considers Glissant, who was a Martinican poet, writer, philosopher. And there's no way I can condense a 4-hour conversation into a pithy line. But I had wanted to ask Fred on this notion of opacity, because in these creolized situations, which is really what Glissant is considering and what I'm trying to consider in my music. So that's what the blending is really. It's about recreating this creolized space where all of these different things come together and we don't know what the outcome will be. So how much can we expect transparency and understanding from that situation?
Right.
And I'm not sure I know what the answer is, but I think I'm comfortable with not expecting a certain reading or outcome because I just can't control it.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe more generally, and okay, this is a very basic question. How do you listen to music? And because I find I have to listen differently depending on what it is I'm listening to.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, you wouldn't listen to Georg Friedrich Haas the same way you would listen to grime, electronic dance tracks. And how do you put yourself in the kind of headspace one needs to be to listen to these things? Can you help me?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't know. I wonder if we would listen to Georg's music and grime that differently. I don't know. I suppose the way to listen is to listen without expectation and try and find something that connects with our ear. That's how I would go about it. I don't know if that's the right way. That's how I go about listening to music in general, no matter what it is. I
mean, I for myself, sometimes I'm listening more passively than others, but I think when I know that there's not a concrete narrative, but there's some concrete intentions or thoughts behind the piece.
Interesting. Yeah.
I start searching for them without necessarily knowing what they are. So you hear the thing in a very different way when you're becomes kind of a what do you call it in England? Where's Wally?
Oh, yeah. Oh, Waldo. Yeah. Wally, is Where's Wally for us? Yeah. Yeah. So you mean the more you know about it, the...
Yeah, I mean, you once you get the language of it, so to say, then things start to click into place and they become obvious. So now I've heard this piece of yours quite a few times, and now that I know what it's about, it's actually quite clear. But I never would have gotten that on the first hearing.
Interesting. I think that's fine, though.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad, but
I think I know. Yeah, but I suppose I'm thinking this is sort of part of the reason why I felt quite a little bit claustrophobic in the UK, because we're taught to, well, certainly when I was studying, we're taught to have this directness and immediacy through our work in music. So making sure that it's most likely that the listener will have a clear sense of what it is you're trying to say on the first listen, because they may never hear it again, you know.
Right,
and
right.
So it was a real active, present thing, and actually, I'm just not that interested in that at all. I don't know what you're going to take from this music, so what's the point in me trying to control it? And maybe you'll hear this piece again, maybe you won't. I think that's okay. If you're confused, that's fine by me. If you're hearing something that wasn't intended, cool, no problem. And I think that's what I mean. And it's just quite nice to have some sort of mysticism sort of hanging in the air. But then, as you say, it is quite nice to to have some of the detail. Maybe that, you know, shifts my my thinking a bit. But I don't know. I think I can't worry about it.
Well, I mean, I keep bringing it up because there's some pieces where I get the explanation and it's almost a disappointment. Where I liked it better when it was abstract. Oh. And then I get the explanation like, maybe you didn't need to tell me that.
Oh, okay.
And in your case, it was a bit more the opposite, where I found the piece much more profound and much more captivating, knowing even just a little bit about where you were coming from with it.
Yeah.
Because maybe some of the references, I just wouldn't have gotten that on the first hearing. I'm sure some people would, but I'm just a bass player.
No. You're a very well-informed musician as well as a bass player. That's really interesting. One of my students heard Even Sweetness Can Scratch the Throat in a concert a few weeks ago in New York. We have this incredible program there are several great programs at Columbia, at the university, but we have ex-veterans, and he had served in Afghanistan. And when he heard the walkie-talkies, he was like, oh my goodness, I've just been transported back to Afghanistan. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I had forgot. I should have thought to warn you about this because, because people, I forgot when it was done at Donaueschinger, there was an African-American person in the audience. They came up to me and said, oh my goodness, that reminds me of sort of heavy policing in Black communities in America. And just even like sort of the sonic sound world, the triggering of the kind of static walkie-talkies and not really being able to hear what's being said, which is the point of it. But I hadn't really considered all of these other possible triggers.
Contexts and connotations. I mean, for me, that was just a fun toy you would have played with as a kid. I have no negative memories of a walkie-talkie.
Right, and then all of these like sort of different hearings of the sonic sound world. I mean, I do. Obviously, I know why I use them in particular, but I think honestly a lot of it is being on the subway for 8 years and not once ever hearing clearly what is being said over the tannoy in the subway, and then someone kind of blurt something out, and then you're 100 blocks uptown than where you want to be, and they had said we're skipping all the stations for the next 100, and no one ever knows because the system is so poor. And
now that is a universal experience. I've traveled a lot of parts of this world, and that is one of the most consistent things.
That is true.
It doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. If you go in a train station and there's an announcement, there's no chance you understood.
That is true. Yeah,
but it's interesting. I mean, you use the walkie-talkie is very heavily featured in both of these pieces, and it's interesting that you're attracted to the fact that the text is not understandable, because the text you're using is quite heavy. You're quoting the Book of Job, you're quoting the Book of Revelations.
Yeah.
It's mostly or completely biblical references.
Yeah.
And not just any biblical references. They're quite specific.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm a very amateur composer, I'm not really sure how to work with text in writing, so I generally avoid it. But if I would use text, usually composers are very concerned that the text is understandable.
Yeah.
And you don't seem to be too bothered one way or the other in this case.
Yeah, I like the unpredictability of what might come out. So there's one line in the Revelation passages where it's talking about people killing each other. And sometimes, I think in the premiere, because it's recorded and it's the title track of my album that came out last year, and that really pops out, and it's so sinister. And you can, sort of really hear that sort of violent aspect, which is obviously harrowing, but it's also quite evocative as well. So it's quite nice not being able to predict what comes through. And then sort of the same for the same album, Even Sweetness Can Scratch the Throat. I think one of the most beautiful moments that comes out is... and thou shalt be secure because there is hope. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. It's so lovely that came out in that one performance. And so it can sort of shift and change the reading of it, or of what one might take from it. But I like that can shift and change depending on how close someone's speaking to the walkie-talkie, whether it's amplified, what the space is like, and I suppose I do quite like that. And and the understanding of the text is not the point at all. And I'd heard a recording of Shouting Forever into the Receiver radio recording, and of the engineers had. The sound engineers you could hear, like they had placed the walkie-talkies higher in the mix, so course. You could hear everything. And I was like, no, it's such a shame. It's completely not the point. It's the opposite of the point. But I think it can look on the page as though they're sort of the duet, sort of, with everything else behind, but they're really meant to be submerged in the material.
Well, I mean, that's just the tradition with most text-based music. Somehow the lyrics should be understood.
Yes,
the spoken text should be understood.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting.
I suppose what is unique, is a composer really saying, I don't want you to understand. I don't want you to understand this. I don't know. Have you come across that before?
Oh, sure. Sure.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, great. So it's fine.
No, that can happen. I mean, what we see a lot of is whispering. Like they just like the sound of whispers, and they definitely don't want it to be understood.
Yeah.
That's very common.
Yeah.
It's a bit... Yeah, somehow it's in the middle if you're using a walkie-talkie, where it's possible to amplify it where it's understandable. And it's also possible, depending on how people speak... I could slow down my speaking and really enunciate.
Yeah, that's true.
That would help. It also has to do with the scoring. If it's really dense and there's a lot going on, then of course it's going to get covered up, and you just kind of get the staticky radio sound. It depends what you want. But that's what I mean. Like you're kind of playing this game going between abstract and concrete.
Yeah.
Because the text is very concrete and very relevant to the piece.
Yeah.
But then you're saying at the same time, actually, it's more the sound should evoke this feeling, and you maybe understand that the text is relevant, but you can't quite catch it. That's an interesting take.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Switching gears.
Okay.
I noticed you're doing quite a bit more teaching
Yes.
these days. Mm-hmm. And as I just mentioned, I'm an amateur composer myself. Mm-hmm. What does lesson 1 with Hannah Kendall look like?
Lesson 1.
If I come in for a lesson, what are we talking about?
Interesting. So this last semester I've taught 2 classes. So I've taught composition, so to music majors, but the class I actually teach most is to non-music majors. So it's a required class at Columbia, which is kind of amazing. So every single undergraduate has to take a music humanities class. Mm-hmm. And so in that class, we consider Pauline Oliveros' meditations. We do one of her meditations and deep listening. Yeah.
That's nice.
Maybe I mentioned that first because I'm trying to remember what we do on class 1 of composition.
So is this a seminar class? It's these aren't private lessons.
Composition is seminar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And is the music humanities class. So sort of more of a lecture, but there's sort of 25 max in those classes.
Yeah, that's a lot for something like composition.
Oh yeah, no. So that's sort of more a historical class, but for seminar composition, it's sort of between 10 and 12 usually, which is still quite a lot. There's a lot of grading anyway, so it feels like a lot, but all wonderful musicians. What I actually ask students to do composition-wise is we do actually talk about auxiliary instruments really early on. So it's not, maybe because this is in America, and so they take their theory classes with the theorists, and then they come to the composers. Come to the composers for composition class, raring to go, and so we can do quite interesting compositional tasks. And one of the earliest things I do ask is to think about auxiliary instruments and to think of how we can extend our sound world beyond the ensemble in a way that is of meaning to the individual composer.
What do you mean by auxiliary instruments?
So by the the objects we've been talking about. So walkie. So I use walkie-talkies for a specific reason. Music boxes for a specific reason. I'm not just using them because they're gimmicks or they're toys, for example. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I ask students to do is to think of how they might extend a traditional ensemble using additional sound makers that is very specific to their creative style. And so what I'm trying to get them to do is to, develop their individual voice, but also really think about in a specific way how they think about their music and how that they can go on to write and speak about their music with good detail. And I think I do that because I do a lot of panel readings. What's that phrase? That's not the right phrase. You know, when you sit on a panel and you choose things.
A jury?
Yes. A jury. Sorry, again, I'll say how jet-lagged I am. A jury, exactly. So you read all of these scores, and mostly young composers, I find, aren't necessarily speaking about their works in a way that evokes deep understanding, if that makes sense. It's not across the board. I don't want to publicly say that this is a thing, but
let me just get that microphone a little closer.
Exactly. But I think we could do better. I think we could do better.
Sure.
And at supporting young composers and being able to really understand what they're doing, why they're constructing the material, they're constructing it in the way in which they're constructing it, and also to speak about it effectively and how that's unique to their compositional voice. So we actually start off with that in my classes, and then we kind of work our way back to the technique.
Interesting. So you actually start off with how to present oneself. Presentation. Interesting.
Yeah. And so, for example, so I had a student, so as part of this task, I had a student who brought a glass bottle. It was a vodka bottle. When can you drink in it? 21. I don't know. He's probably 21. It was a vodka, but anyway, well, that doesn't matter. I probably should. It was a large glass bottle. Okay. And he's like, this is the instrument that I found. And it sounded really cool. It sounded great. And so this semester we were working with flute and voice. So actually having, playing with different, pitch material and content using, a series of glass bottles in extension of the flute. That could actually be quite an interesting sound. But then if you ask the student, okay, well, why did you pick this object? So I don't know, it's just totally random. I thought it sounded cool for this class. I was like, okay, yes, you're right, but that's not enough. Why have you chosen this thing? Do you really want to write about your work that it was completely random and it sounded cool?
I mean, I genuinely believe there needs to be space for things just sounding cool.
Absolutely.
We should encourage that. That's fine. But maybe there's a more interesting way of phrasing that.
Yeah, that is true. Yes, that is true. But I've certainly read descriptions from composers where you could boil this whole paragraph down to like, I thought this would sound neat. Mm-hmm. And they just said it very fancy like, but okay, yeah. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But of course it's important for things to sound cool and to be able to play and to be playful in experimentation, absolutely. But then there's just something. So I'm trying to recall specific examples that have worked well and where they're just so overwhelmingly powerful that yes, it's a cool sound. Yes, it's really neat, but
what are you doing with it?
What are you doing with it, and why does it mean something to you personally? That's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I don't think I would pass this class.
It's just an intro. You ask what we do on day one. That's what. Maybe I'm asking big things on day one, but
yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah. Then we get to notation eventually.
Okay. How? Yeah. It could be I misunderstood something I heard in another interview of yours.
Oh, okay.
So if I have it wrong, we'll delete this part.
Okay.
But I heard you say that at some point in your career, you were working in arts management.
Yeah, no, that's true.
You were. Okay, that's a true story.
That is true.
Where in your life does that part of the story come in?
Oh, right. From a very early age. So when I was 21, I started... So 21 or 22, I did an internship as part of a master's, an arts management master's at the Barbican.
Oh, okay.
And then I stayed there for a few years. Cool. After that. So working in media relations at the Barbican, which was really good fun.
Media relations.
Yeah. So I was there at a really cool time. It was Steve Reich's 75th birthday year and anniversary. So it was a huge Steve Reich festival.
So this was 15 years ago.
He's turning 90. Yeah. So that was, and I had seen music for 18 musicians for the first time live. with him playing with his original band. It was
cool.
It was really, really cool. That's still one of my top 5 all-time favorite concerts, because it was electrifying. It was incredible hearing music for 18. And then after the Barbican, I worked at a charity that was working to actively diversify classical music, and I did that for about 9 or 10 years. Yeah.
Okay, so then a lot of arts management experience, actually.
Yeah.
Which I would guess is quite unusual in the world of composers.
Yeah, it's yes. I would say so. Yes. Yeah.
Do you suppose that's had some impact on what you're writing or how you're writing, or you see that as a completely separate topic?
I think it did when I was still doing it, for sure.
Okay.
So I think that's how I sort of had the drive to self-produce my first opera. So I self-produced that. I would not recommend that.
The Knife of Dawn, it's
yes,
called.
It is called that. I would really recommend. I would do both. I'm pleased I did it, but
no, I couldn't believe that when I read that you self-produced. I mean, that's crazy. A major production at a big hall that you just kind of did it.
Just kind of did it.
That's insane.
Nearly finished. It is insane. It is actual insanity. Yes, I agree with you. So I'm happy I did it because it exists now. And the only reason I could do it was because I had the knowledge of sort of everything. So fundraising, marketing, general producing, etc., etc. So that's how it could be possible. And I suppose I thought, I should do this because I was working. I was one of the directors at this charity that was actively trying to diversify classical music. And I thought, wait, hang on. So there was another article about who would sing the role of Otello. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's just the same thing again. And so
that old chestnut.
Yeah, that old chestnut. So I thought, wait, hang on, I could maybe try and actively diversify opera. Oh yeah, let's try and do that. So that was the thinking behind all of it. Yeah. Okay. But that's such a, oh my goodness. Yeah.
One and done.
Traumatized.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. One and done. Yeah. But I'm happy because it's had a good life, that opera. It's still being produced. So, but yeah, by other people. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm never doing that again. Yeah.
No, I think actually that's important generally, that people have a few other life experiences outside of their one thing.
Yeah.
Because I definitely miss that from some students, that they just play their instrument or they just compose and it's like they never leave the house.
Right.
I mean, I didn't do arts management. That sounds scary. But I was working in a violin shop for a couple of years.
Really?
So I was doing repairs and things like that.
Interesting.
So like it was still related-ish to playing the instruments, but it was like a real job. I had to show up and clock in. And,
wow. So 9 to 5 every day?
Kind of, except I was doing overtime, so it was more like 9 to 9.
Wow. That's incredible. So I need to reset the bridge on my violin. How do I do that? Should I take the strings off and then do it?
Just
or loosen
the
them?
strings. I do have to tell you, they didn't trust me with the violins. I was only doing the basses.
Okay.
I mean, with the basses, if you need to move a bridge, you can literally just whack it with a shoe.
So, okay, I won't try that one.
With the violin, no, you loosen the strings a little bit
just
and
do
just pop
that.
it in. It's not that hard.
It's easy, isn't it?
It's surprising. Some things are really easy. Some things I don't even want to do. So, like, if the seams pop open, that's no problem.
Really?
I have the clamps and the glue here. I do it myself. This is practically every winter or something. I have a lot of basses. One of them's going to pop open. But then, like, if a crack goes straight down the top, I'm not touching that.
So that's bad. Cracks are bad. Seams are fine.
Like, if there's a gap where there's supposed to be glue, then that's fine.
Oh, okay.
But if the wood itself is cracked, you're in trouble. And I was more specialized on the setup aspect, so getting the right string height and planing the fingerboard and stuff like that. But that was a really useful training in the end, which I couldn't have predicted at the time. I was still in college back then. But it prepared me for now working with people like you when you want to put dreadlock cuffs on my strings or bang on the side with a hammer. I actually have a pretty good sense of what's safe and what's not. Because a lot of string players treat everything like a bit too precious, and they don't necessarily know what's safe and what's not. Because some things are really, really dangerous.
Yes, of course.
And some things look like they should be dangerous, but it's actually, if you know what you're doing, it's fine.
So what's a dangerous thing?
The worst thing you could do is anything around the F hole.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense.
Anything around there, that's so delicate that you just lightly tapping it, you're risking a crack.
Yeah, I would imagine that. Has anyone asked for that?
Yeah, sometimes... Not specifically, but sometimes young composers get a bit overexcited and they'll come over and want to show me something, and they start touching things.
Gosh. Yeah.
If I see that hand drifting towards...
Okay, I see. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I usually try things out myself. If I wouldn't do it on my violin, I don't think I'd ask.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
folks to do it, but we're not all in that position.
Not everyone. I mean, when you're working with professionals, not everyone has like a trashy violin. My colleagues do. I don't have a so-called trashy bass. I just have nice basses, and I mistreat them a bit.
Okay.
But there's some things I just wouldn't do with them. I mean, the issue is the more crazy the stuff you want to do is, the less good of an instrument you can expect.
Right.
So, like, it might be there's a cool effect you want to use, but then you also want to have some normal notes thrown in there, and those are going to sound really bad.
Right, because of, the manipulations that have been done.
Well, yeah, not only that, but, like, they will choose to use the worst instrument they have access to.
Because of the instrument, the
instrument itself is not good.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to risk... I mean, if somebody has a Stradivarius, they're not going to start clipping patafix all over the strings. Even though it actually wouldn't hurt the instrument at all. It's just...
But why?
But you don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah, super interesting.
I'll ask one more question and then we can wrap this up. What is your latest obsession? Speaking of toys and gadgets and gizmos, what's something we might expect in your next piece?
A lot of kettles. It's the kettles.
Kettles, tea kettles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, they sound so good. They're going to be in all my upcoming pieces. Yes, I was... Like, did you know to ask this? Because I can talk about this for hours. Or was it just...
Maybe we can just talk about it for 5 minutes. But no, I didn't know to ask this. I just had a feeling...
So interesting. Okay, yeah. So I was a bit apprehensive about it because obviously... Well, not necessarily obviously, but that's kind of sounds wacky. But... I was... So my latest large ensemble piece, so it's called Building a Burning House. And I think I've had a lot on my plate. And I think I had another idea for this piece. But then so in my head, so I'd already started composing, but then when I had actually looked at the instrumental lineup, I'd realised, oh wait, hang on, none of these instruments are actually in the piece. That I had ideas for the bassoons and the oboes.
Oh, okay.
And then I looked at finally got to writing things down. I was like, there's no bassoon or oboe. Cool, amazing. So I had to quickly rethink things. And so it was called Building a Burning House, and I knew that I wanted this sort of dangerous climatic moment. So almost like, like the boiling point of the piece. Mm-hmm. And because of, even though it's about burning, I had this idea of like boiling. And I had this ridiculous idea. I was like, maybe I could get hot plates and I could, have a kettle, and then when it gets to boiling point and the kettle's whistle, and that could kind of be cool. But it's in the back of my head. But I was thinking also ridiculous and super dangerous. I would never forgive myself if someone got seriously hurt in this kind of ridiculous endeavor of boiling kettles on I mean, that's kind of crazy. So I had kind of thought maybe I won't do that. But I ordered a kettle anyway, just in case. And then it was quite fortuitous because, so years ago I had read this article, but I had lost it, which is kind of crazy because obviously I did a doctorate and you're reading all the time and you're making note of what you've read. So it's kind of crazy that I lost. I couldn't remember where I had read this article about how people on the plantations would sing and pray inside kettles.
Okay.
And I was just like,
inside of a kettle.
Yeah. So when we talk about a kettle, so it probably would have been sort of the pan or a pot in which sugar would have been boiled.
Oh, so more like a cauldron.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're called kettles. But this chapter also talks about pots and kettles. And so the day that my new kettle arrived is the day that I've refound this article. I was like, that's crazy. Okay, let me see what happens if I put my face in the kettle to see what that sounds like. And it sounds amazing. So you can activate the whistle on a tea kettle by breathing into it and exhaling. So it's almost so you put you make a seal around your mouth.
Oh,
like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And you kind of breathe into and out of the chamber of the tea kettle, activating the whistle. And yeah, it sounds like, a tea kettle whistling, like when it's fully at full boiling point. But you can also have this kind of, it sounds like dying, really. This kind of, it's almost like a death rattle, and you can have this kind of fluctuating quiet. So
am I picturing this right? You take the top off the kettle.
Yeah.
But you leave the lid on the stem.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, so the whistle activates. And so I had, in this latest piece, 5 people playing tea kettles. So it's a sort of chorus of kettles. And so it sounds like wailing and singing at the same time. It's this very strange duality. And so the whole piece kind of builds up to this wailing kettle sound. So I think it sounds cool, but it's the meaning behind it which is, for me, so powerful, that even in places and spaces of complete atrocity, people still have the need and desire to sing and pray. And they would do that so that the plantation owners, couldn't hear. So I found that quite powerful. And because I found lots of different ways to use them, the kettles are...
Kettle's coming back.
Kettle's coming back, harmonicas phasing out.
Nice. Do you need a specific brand of kettle for this to work? Because we've had this issue.
Yeah, so the most important thing is that the handle is collapsible, so you can put your face in it.
Okay.
That's the most important thing. But I've done it with 2 different brands, and they do sound different, but both effective.
Okay.
I think it's the size of the chamber of the kettle can affect the sound, and also obviously the type of whistle. But I think it can work across several brands as long as there's space for your face.
Good. We have this issue. There's a piece from Heiner Goebbels. There's a scene in Schwarz auf Weiß, in black on white. It's a duet for piccolo and teapot. And the thing was, it was Heiner's personal teapot, which just by chance, when it's heated up and boiling, plays a perfect C major triad.
No way.
And they could not find another one that does that. So it's a one-of-a-kind object that you absolutely have to have for any production of that piece.
You're joking.
So I would just say, if you find a brand that you like, buy like 50 of those things.
Yeah, I've got 6.
Good.
7.
Good.
Yeah. And it's really easy to sterilize them. So
yeah, self-sterilizing, right?
Yeah, so it's perfect. But yeah, that's so funny. Oh, wow. What brand is that tea kettle?
Oh, I have no idea. It must be, the production's from the mid-90s.
Oh, okay.
So it must be from some time ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah. For me, must be steel, must have a collapsible handle. Yeah.
Well, on that note.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Hannah's newest album is named for the same piece. Ensemble Modern premiered at Donaueschingen. Shouting Forever into the Receiver. It's out now on the NMC label.
That was Nebenstimmen, a podcast by Ensemble Modern.